biomolecules. So the way that I've delineated this in Brightspace is there are components of this that I think are chapter 2, which is biomolecules, and there are some components, enzymes, I believe, is a part of chapter 3. So there may be a chapter 2/3, readings and so on as far as your text for this packet. Okay. So our objective here to understand what it means to be a biomolecule. So what is a biomolecule? And then the 4 classes of biomolecules, how they differ structurally and functionally. And so what we'll see here is that there's this structural functional relationship that I've been stressing so far. The way that something looks dictates something very unique about the way that it behaves or the way that it functions. Okay. Let's start off with a few teaser questions here. Oops. Okay, I apologize there. Okay. I'm going to launch a poll here. All right, last 10 seconds. All right. So this is a pretty straightforward question. What elements make up biomolecules, which are also called macromolecules? A lot of response for B, which is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. So that's absolutely correct, okay? Nickel is not an element in biomolecules, neither is helium, okay? So the correct answer here, B, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Let's look at another question. Just make sure that if you're not speaking, your mic's on mute. Okay, last few seconds here. All right, let's see. So the question, what are the 4 basic types of biomolecules? A lot of you selected A, carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleotides, which is correct, okay? A few persons selected D and B. D includes amino acids, which are in fact proteins. So these are the building blocks of proteins and not a basic biomolecule in itself. And likewise, B as well. So amino acids are the building blocks of proteins and not a macromolecule or biomolecule in and of themselves, okay? So the correct answer here would have been A. All right. Oh, we've got one more. Let's see. All right, let's take a look. Okay, so there's a bit of an even split between C and D, and I typically see this. This is a bit of a trick question. Which of the following is not a biomolecule? And so we've kind of narrowed it down to C and D, wax and water, because we know that proteins are, and deoxyribonucleic acids are nucleotides. But basically, wax is a type of fat, okay? And so we really want to underscore the difference between, or really the qualification of a biomolecule or macromolecule. It must be synthesized by a living thing. And so we can see water in the presence, or rather in the absence of living organisms, of living species, okay? The other three molecules we do not. These are synthesized by living things. Although water is a large percentage of our body, we can see water in the absence of living things, living organisms. The others we cannot. And that is the true definition of a biomolecule or macromolecule. Okay. So a biomolecule, otherwise called a macromolecule, is really a molecule that's synthesized by a living thing. They're primarily composed of carbon atoms, but we can see other atoms, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, even sulfur to some extent. And so in different proportions and different organizations, we end up with 4 basic biomolecules when these atoms combine in different ways. We end up with carbs or carbohydrates, lipids, otherwise known as fats, proteins, and then nucleic acids, which are our DNA. And so these are the main groups of biomolecules that we find throughout our body. And remember, these must be synthesized by living organisms. We cannot find carbs, lipids, proteins, or nucleic acids without the presence of a living organism, living species. Okay. And I do want to point out here before I move on, the structure around carbon. Carbon is probably the most abundant atom that we see comprising our macromolecules. And because it's got 4 covalent or 4 bonds attached to this carbon atom, carbon is a really stable, it creates stability in our biomolecules, it creates stability in these structures. And so that's why it's kind of the most abundant or the primary atom that we see as a part of these molecules. Let's talk about carbohydrates first. I'm sure you've heard of carbohydrates in layman's language as starches or carbs. They're mainly comprised of carbon, which is the most abundant, and hydrogen and oxygen. And then they form into 3 basic types, right? We've got monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides, depending on how many monomers are attached to these molecules. So monosaccharides have 1 monomer, if you will, of carbohydrates. They are basically glucose, galactose, and fructose. So these are essentially the building blocks of our carbohydrates. These are the single monomers or the single units that form carbohydrates. Then we've got disaccharides. So if we combine 2 monosaccharides together, we get a disaccharide. The examples here are sucrose, which is the combination of glucose and fructose. Anyone know what sucrose is commonly referred to as?
Sugar?
Yep, sugar, our table sugar. That's what sucrose is. It's glucose plus fructose, which is fruit sugar, to give us sucrose. Another example of a disaccharide, lactose. I'm sure we've heard about this one as well. Galactose plus glucose, which is our 2 monomers combined. Anyone know what lactose is referred to as?
Ain't it like dairy products?
Yep, so dairy or milk, more specifically. So milk sugar is what we refer to as lactose. And I'm sure if you're lactose intolerant, this is the molecule, this is the disaccharide that is in, your body is intolerant to, that milk sugar or lactose. And then polysaccharides are going to be more complex structures where we have many different monosaccharides forming more of a complicated structure that we see here. So we've got glucose units combining. This entire molecule is called glycogen. This is one of the most abundant storage molecules in our body. We have glycogen being stored in muscle, glycogen being stored in liver. And so as we can see, it's simply a bunch of glucose monomers stacked one against the other. And this is a way for the body to put away this glucose reservoir during times of feeding, so that when we're in a more of a fasted state, we can tap into those reservoirs and break down that glycogen to release that glucose, which we can use for cellular energy. So it's a way to store our monomers until they're needed at a later time. Let's look at how we actually make these various complex structures. There are two processes involved. The first one is called condensation. And so in order to join two monomers or two monosaccharides together, we're going to have to release water and then join those two monomers together covalently, okay? And so that's going to be called a condensation reaction. That's why water is going to be released. And basically, we release water and simply bind these two structures together. Alternatively, we can think about breaking down these monomers. In the example I just gave about, tapping into those reservoirs, tapping in, breaking down that glycogen, we're going to have to hydrolyze or use a hydrolysis reaction in order to split those complex polysaccharides and even disaccharides down into their singular monosaccharide components. And in order to do that, we're going to have to insert a molecule of water, and that will split those covalent bonds and release those monomers individually. So we've got a condensation reaction, which joins monomers together and releases water. And then we've got a hydrolysis reaction, which requires water, but then will cleave that covalent bond and release those smaller units. Okay, I'm going to pause here and as we move on to lipids. But we're pretty much done with carbohydrates. So let me know if you have any questions about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are our main source of energy. We're going to talk about them when we look at cellular respiration, at the way that a single unit of glucose can be broken down to liberate energy for our cells to do work. So they're probably the most important, most abundant macromolecule. We can even think about them as the most abundant food sources in our diet as well. We've got that larger section of carbohydrates, smaller degree of lipids, and then protein and so on. So it's going to be the most abundant source of our energy reservoir as well as our energy usage for cells.